Barbieheimer is everywhere. The unlikely mashup of two of the year's hottest films stems from a coincidentally shared July 21st premiere. Sure, movies often release at similar times, but it's pretty funny to juxtapose one of the greatest historical stories told by one of the most skilled living directors with Oppenheimer. Hey, they've definitely got more in common than might be obvious. The lineups are star-studded. There's Tony Stark, the Peaky Blinders guy, Harley Quinn, and many more of Hollywood's finest performers, packed into just under 5 hours of viewing. Add to that brilliant cinematography, internet meme culture, and some die-hard fans of both the Barbie franchise and Nolan's creative empire, and you've got a surefire recipe for success. It's undeniable that both movies are going to perform really well at the box office, but you might have noticed that some of the premieres worldwide have been missing a few of their best actors. The cast of Oppenheimer walked out of the UK premiere, including frontrunners Cillian Murphy, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and Rami Malek. At the same time, the Barbie marketing campaign was in full swing. Margot Robbie was showing off vintage Barbie looks left, right, and centre on a press store, and there's no shortage of news articles and social media chatter noting how intensely the movie's being promoted. Surprisingly, both of these events happened for the same reason. Hollywood has ground to a halt. To understand why, we have to dive into the weird and wonderful American creative industries and learn why American television and film are facing the biggest strikes in history. First things first, labour unions exist to protect workers. They organise employees into large groups that have the power to collectively bargain with employers for better working conditions and concessions. We could go into the benefits and potential drawbacks of joining one, but a crucial element of unionism is that workers have the ability to go on strike. They can withdraw their labour to force negotiations and protest unfair circumstances. Hollywood has had its fair share of industrial action in the past. Back in 2007, all 12,000 film and television screenwriters of the Writers Guild of America, or WGA, went on strike to seek increased funding for writers. At the time, they were concerned about the lion's share of profits going to the larger studios. The strike targeted the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, or AMPTP, which is a trade association representing over 350 American television and film production companies. The impact was significant, with a reported $20 million daily cost and 38,000 jobs at risk. After 100 days of acting, however, negotiations led to an agreement being reached by both parties. Crucially, there were assurances for WGA involvement in new types of media, including streaming services, which preempted Netflix and Amazon to hire guild members when they started producing shows. Similarly, the WGA went on the longest strike in its history in 1988, clocking in at 153 days. Again, there were significant concessions made to guild members. Writers got more residuals, including when shows were syndicated internationally, and retained creative rights for original screenplays and TV movies. Long story short, union action works, and that brings us to today, where the WGA and another union representing actors called SAG-AFTRA both voted to go on strike. It's the first time they've simultaneously engaged in strike action since 1960, and marks the largest disruption to American television and film since the COVID pandemic. Both unions failed to come to an agreement over a new contract with the AMPTP, which, as a reminder, represents most American television and film companies. They're concerned about numerous issues. The WGA says writers are not getting enough compensation from residuals, which are payments made whenever a show reruns on air, is syndicated to other networks, is released on DVD, or, crucially, is made available via streaming services. As other forms of traditional media decline in popularity, streaming services are blowing up by comparison. Well, Netflix might just be blowing up in general. And writers want to be fairly compensated for this relatively newer distribution route. AI has been absolutely everywhere this year too. ChatGPT and similar large language models have the potential to transform creative processes, including ideation and screenwriting, and studios are experimenting with using artificial intelligence to scan actors' faces to generate digital performances. It's essentially the plot of a Black Mirror episode, and SAG-AFTRA isn't happy that studios are trying to get out of fairly paying big stars and extras alike by using technology to effectively make a one-off payment for perpetual use of their likenesses. It might be a little bit unfair to describe this as a bootleg, but synthetic media risks the reputations and livelihoods that actors and others in creative industries work hard to cultivate, in the same way that there's currently controversy about generative learning being applied to art and music. The situation raises important questions about how we should responsibly use artificial intelligence and its rapidly changing capabilities to help workers and not necessarily replace them. It's significant enough to have caused coordinated action from Hollywood's biggest unions, and, as a result, many of our favourite stars have chosen to stand in solidarity. That's why they walked out of movie premieres as soon as strike action began. The red carpets might be a little more lacking for their absence, but it's not just new movies that have been affected. The as-yet untitled sequel to Spider-Man No Way Home, American Dad, Law & Order, Jimmy Kimmel Live, The Tonight Show, SNL, and even Beetlejuice 2 are some of the shows and films that have had production, writing, and premieres suspended or delayed as a result of the strikes. For what it's worth, there have been a variety of responses from entertainment executives, members of the AMPTP, and the wider public. Other Hollywood unions and international unions representing creative workers have broadly voiced support for the strike action, joining domestic politicians such as President Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. Some representatives have even been seen at the picket line themselves. On the other hand, executives aren't as happy. Disney CEO Bob Iger said that the demands of the unions aren't realistic, echoing the negative sentiment of others in the industry, like Warner Bros. CEO and President David Zaslav, who acknowledged that many studios weren't glad about the strike action. One studio executive was even quoted by Deadline Hollywood as saying that the endgame is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses, an aggressively bleak characterization of the situation that was broadly criticised. Whatever you think of the strikes, it's clear that they'll continue to have a significant impact on premieres, movies, and television until an amicable resolution is reached. Both sides are digging in for now, so it might take a while for service to resume to normal levels. Barbieheimer, Bootlegs, and Beetlejuice 2. There's a lot at stake, and actors are walking out of movie premieres to protest what they see as an unfair change in the industry to the benefits of studios and executives. Creatives need fair compensation. That is, unless you're running a small YouTube channel by yourself which started as a summer project, so hopefully a tentative agreement comes through. Until then, I'll be watching Oppenheimer first in the double bill. It's the proper way.